Hey guys, hope this finds everybody well today. I get a lot of questions concerning operating and building a greenhouse. So I just kind of made me a little cheat sheet here of some things that I think are important, things to consider before you build a greenhouse. There's so many variables that there's no way that that you can cover it all. It's just going to be depending on what you want to. What is your goal? What do you want to achieve? So I thought I wrote down some things that I thought are important things to consider before you even start, and then things to consider once you have started. So that way you'll know what you're trying to achieve to begin with, and just to give you some ideas. Like I say, I am by far no expert. The only thing I can tell you is what I've learned from my experience. And of course, I've learned a lot from, there are numerous people on YouTube that have greenhouses. I mean, a lot bigger than mine, a lot bigger operation than I got going on here. But I'm just going to give you some food for thought based on my experience, and you can take it however you want to use it, But I think probably, as we all know, the first thing that you would consider is your budget. I mean, how much money do you want to spend on a greenhouse? How much money can you afford to spend? Are you going to be using recycled materials? Some recycled materials, everything from the big box store. Just that's what you got to think about there first. I mean, how am I going to pay for this in order to get this thing built? So keep that as your first consideration. Location. I mean, do you have a place to put this greenhouse? There are, you need to get at least 8 hours of sun. I would say 6 to 8 hours minimum of sun on your greenhouse if you want to be successful with it. As we all know, plants need sunlight. You don't have to have it out in the middle of a cornfield or just as long as you can get a good 6 to 8 good hours of sun on that greenhouse for them plants to grow. There are advantages to not having quite as much sunlight, or all day 12-hour sun or whatever all day long. You may not need to use shade cloth. I've never had to use shade cloth because it takes the sun probably till about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning before it's ever even hitting my greenhouse in the summertime. It'll hit a little bit earlier in the winter because the deciduous trees, they don't have any leaves on them, and so the sun's able to filter through the trees. But in the summertime, it takes it a little bit longer. And then it's the same deal in the afternoon time when the sun starts to set. I have another set of trees that kind of block the evening sun. So and that can be a good thing, especially when things are really hot. And so location, think about that as well. I mean, is it level? Is it are you going to have it graded? We all know it's got to be level regardless of what you have to do. I mean, I had to do some minor grading on mine because my yard is kind of on a slope. So I had to do a little bit of minor grading to get mine in. What type of foundation you're going to be using. Are you going to be just simply driving pipes or rebar in the ground? Or are you going to be using, you're going to be using hoops of some type? Or are you going to be doing a structure like similar to what I have right here, where I've got 4x4s on the ground and being held in with rebar as well. So they're just basically laying on top of the ground with rebar to keep them in place. So that's like I said, that's one thing to consider right there. Another thing you're going to have is two things unless you're just simply doing a hoop house and you're not going to be growing through the winter time but especially if you're going to be doing hydroponics or anything like that, you got to have access to power. How much power you're going to need is all going to depend on what you're going to do. If you're just going to be running a few little small hydroponic pumps and some air pumps and lights and things like that, you're not going to need a lot of power. Simply those things do not draw a lot of power. But say like in a case like I have now, I mean, you know, I'm using electric heat, so I have to have quite a bit of power up here. I mean, mine's run on a 240 volt, 30 amp circuit. So, and you know, the heat, that's primarily because the heater draws that much power. The rest of that stuff don't draw no power much. I mean, just a couple of fans and shutter motor and pumps and things like that, you know, it's very minimal. So you got to consider that. You have access to power. Can you get it up there? Can you get enough power? You know, a little simple 110 circuit, you know, and I'll run a few pumps and lights and things like that. I mean, you can pull that off of about anything, you know, and you could even, you know, a good stout weatherproof drop cord, you know, and if you could drop cord it if you had to. Like I say, just some certain things to consider. Also, you got to consider, you know, of course you're going to have water. And particularly if you're growing hydroponically, you're going to have unchlorinated water. Which, I mean, the way I do mine is I have two 40-gallon storage barrels inside my greenhouse that I keep air stones in, because I have county water, city water that contains chlorine. So I keep air stones running in them constantly to keep the chlorine boiled out, because when you have to replace that water, of course, you're putting more chlorine back in there. And with hydroponics especially, you do not want to be using chlorine to kill any micronutrients or bacteria, good bacteria that you need to grow your plants. So that's one thing to consider right there. If you're on a well, or if you have access to you know, running water like a creek or a stream or something other like that, you know, that's not going to be a problem. Do you have rain barrels? Do you intend on putting rain barrels on your greenhouse? I mean, a lot of people do that. Like I say, it's going to depend on the design. I've considered putting them on mine. I just have not done it, but that is definitely something to consider. Free water, you know, 55-gallon drums. I mean, and I know some states don't allow you to catch rainwater. Why that is, I don't know. But that's just, like I say, this is all just food for thought, guys. I mean, just, you know, just giving y'all some things to think about. But if those of you that have not built greenhouses, those of you already operating greenhouses, you already know all this. But anyway, so power and water, two important things right there as well. Okay, moving on down the line here. Okay, speaking of power, there's a lot of people want to be off grid. They all want to be able to operate a greenhouse off grid. Okay, need to think about that if you want to do that, or if you want to do both. You know, if you want to run you know, solar panels, or you know, you're going to operate a generator, or, you know, how are you going to do it? Of course, you know, solar panels are an up and coming thing. I mean, right there, if you got a place to put them, of course, you can't have them where they're interfering with the sunlight to your greenhouse. But like I say, just going over things just for you to consider, depending on what you're going to do, you know. So keep that all in mind too, off grid, on grid, or both. Size of structure, you know, that's going to play a big role. Because the bigger it is, the more heating and cooling, you know, options, especially if you're going to run this thing year round. Of course, I mean, greenhouses are very hard to heat. They're not easy to cool either, but they're extremely hard to heat, because the material is simple. I mean, you know, especially if you're using, I mean, I'm using double layer, you know, inflated poly, which helps tremendously. But the thing about it is, you know, that when you're considering heat, you know, you can't consider square footage like, you know, length times width. You know, you got to go length times width times height in a greenhouse, because you got to figure all the square footage of actual dead space inside that greenhouse that you have to heat or cool. So it's going to, you know, actually I'm undersized on my heater. You know, my heater is really it's supposed to be twice the size it is, and it's 18,000 BTU. So, you know, it's really, for my size greenhouse, which is 14 feet by 20 feet and 9 feet tall, it's considered to need 36,000 BTUs of heat in order to keep it at the temperatures that are ideal for growing in the wintertime. And all it depends on outside ambient air temperatures. Depends on location. I mean, you know, I'm located here in northern Georgia. If you live in Michigan or Canada or somewhere like that where it's really, really cold, you got to consider that because that's going to be figured in your factors. So the bigger the greenhouse, the more BTUs of heating or cooling you're going to need if you're going to try to run the thing year round. Like I say, if you're simply just overwintering plants or something like that, you can get away with less. Types of heating you can use, of course, you can use kerosene, you can use propane, you can use natural gas, you can use wood barrel stoves. A lot of guys use wood barrel stoves with great success because they really put out the BTUs. But you got to consider that as well. I mean, you have access to wood. Are you going to have to buy the wood, or can you get it? People that have it, or just give it to you, or you can just get it for free, or you go out and cut trees down and split the wood yourself and load the stoves yourself. I mean, there's just things to consider. I'm not able to do that because I have a terrible back, so I had to go with electric heat, and plus I have a backup plan, propane. In the event that my power goes down, I can still operate heat inside this greenhouse in the wintertime, because I grow in the wintertime all winter long. So so just think about that when you think about how big you want it to be. Of course, when we build these things, and we think, oh, that'll be big enough, and then you start packing it full of plants and you find out you don't have as much as you thought you did. I wish mine was twice the size it is right now, but there's a lot of things you can do even in a 6x8 greenhouse, or 10x12 or anything like that. You can grow a lot of food in one of those greenhouses if you just use your space wisely. Type of structure. What are you going to build this thing out of? I mean, do you have you've seen a lot of greenhouses. I mean, that's kind of how I got started. I looked around various different greenhouse designs. I mean, watched a lot of YouTube videos of what other people were doing, and actually wound up finding an idea for my design on somebody's website that I just ran across during a Google search or something like that, and it kind of inspired me to build the design that I did with the 2x4s and the plywood gussets and such as that. All I did was take his scale and I scaled it down to the size that I wanted it, because I wanted something that's gonna, that I didn't want PVC hoops for a for a more of a permanent structure greenhouse. I mean, of course, this thing can be disassembled and put on a truck and hauled off if it need be, because everything's just screwed together. But I just wanted something a little more sturdy, because we get some high winds here a lot of times, and I didn't want to come out here and find my greenhouse blown over one day. But like I say, I mean, are you gonna you're gonna use metal frame? I know MHP Gardner Bobby, his is done out of metal hoops. Metal hoops are very strong, withstand a lot of snow load. That's something that you got to consider too. I mean, if you live up north where you get a lot of snow, your structure is going to be very important to you, because snow gets very, very heavy, and you don't want to go out there, and I've seen too many horror stories and pictures of people's greenhouses where they've collapsed under a snow load. You also don't want this thing to blow away either. So just keep that in mind as to what type of material you're going to use to build it out of. Are you going to cover it with poly? I have greenhouse poly, dual layer, and it is inflated with a blower. The inflation gives you insulation barrier, because you have dead space between the two pieces of plastic. It also adds strength and rigidity to the building structure itself. You'd be surprised really how much stronger it makes the building with it being inflated. I wouldn't have it any other way. The wind will just bounce off of that plastic rather than just hitting a dead side somewhere or whatever, and just trying to move your greenhouse. Wind just bounces off of it. I mean, I've been inside that greenhouse when the wind was blowing 60 plus, and if you didn't hear the stuff going on outside, you would never even know it was blowing inside the greenhouse. That's how well it bounces off of there. Okay, polycarbonate panels. Polycarbonate panels are very nice. Like I said, there's pluses and minuses to everything. They can get expensive because you really want to use the dual wall type polycarbonate panels because they just provide more insulation, and you know, you got to keep the insulation as best you can inside of a greenhouse, and it's hard to do. It tends to yellow over time. Of course, you know, your greenhouse, you know, your good quality greenhouse plastic like I'm using right here is only, you know, it's only rated for 4 years. So you got to keep that in mind. If you're going to use, you know, poly like I'm using, you got to consider that you ought to keep you a backup roll in case you ever need to replace it. I know we had a hailstorm here a couple of years ago. It put 100 holes in mine, and fortunately it only penetrated the first layer. So I was able to fix it all with repair tape, and I'm still using that to this day. But I do have backup plastic. If something happens to this thing, I mean, I can come out here and I can recover it in a pinch if I have to. So keep that in mind. Poly panels, you know, the polycarbonate panels, they can get damaged. Plus, you're going to be required to have more structural support for polycarbonate panels. If you're going to be using, you know, double pane glass or whatever, you know, just like I said, so many different factors and so many different ways to do this that, you know, it's just unreal. But probably your most economical way is going to be with the poly greenhouse plastic. It's very durable. It's 80%, gives you 80% sunlight. That's with dual layer too as well. So I mean, even using dual layer, you're getting 80% sunlight through your greenhouse, which is that's automatic, kind of a built-in 20% shade cloth for you right there. But believe me, it works fine. So keep that in mind. Like I say, we talked about, are you going to be growing all season long? Are you just going to be growing in the warmer months? You know, through the summer, some areas, you know, and all that. It's not like it is here, you know, where it just gets blistering hot, and you know, and the humidity is just terrible here. But you get, like I say, depending on where you're at, what you're going to do. Are you going to grow all year long? Are you going to grow through the winter time? Need to keep that in mind. That's primarily the reason I built mine, because I mean, I love having it to extend the season as well, and plus, you know, grow my starts and, you know, and have everything ready to go when the springtime comes, so I can I have the plants ready to go to put in the garden outside. I mean, I love being able to do that. But the thing I love the most is being able to produce fresh produce in the wintertime. That's the most beautiful thing that I think has ever come about. So think about that. How are you going to use your greenhouse? Are you going to do hydroponics? If you are, then there's more things to consider. You know, you're going to need pumps. You're going to need reservoirs. You're going to need tubing, pipe, Dutch buckets. If you're going to grow Dutch buckets, so if you're going to do all Kratky, you know, well, you just got to either buy you some totes, or you got to build you some beds with styrofoam tops on them or whatever, with net cups, and you know, to do it all Kratky. You can do it all Kratky. It doesn't have to be Dutch buckets. I prefer to do both, because there's advantages to both in my book. So, you know, just think about that. I mean, the Kratky system is the most inexpensive thing that you can do, and it's so easy to do. And once you get the Dutch bucket system set up, it's once you're already set up, got all your materials that you need, and everything is set up and ready to go, then, you know, it's just a matter of worrying with your nutrients. And believe you me, these nutrients, the ones like I use the dry bag nutrients, and you don't take very much of those things. I mean, you know, I used them all year long, and, you know, it don't even look like I hardly made a dent in them. So keep that in mind. You know, once you buy, if you go that route, I mean, there's all types of nutrients, liquids. I don't use the liquids. Like I say, I use the bag dry ones that you mix with water. It only takes a few grams, you know, for 5 gallons of water. I mean, you know, it'll last you. I mean, I got enough nutrients probably to last me for years. I don't know, and you know, I've only bought it one time. So I'll get several seasons of growing out of it. So like I said, keep that in mind. Once you're set up and running, you just got to worry about your nutrients, and just maintaining everything. Your buckets, you can your local bakeries, Kroger stores. Kroger bakeries is where I got mine. They're food grade icing buckets. They will give you those free of charge with the lids. You may have to clean them, because you're not going to find too many that's going to clean them for you. But then you just got to consider buying some paint strainers to go in them, some perlite to go in them, which neither one of those are very expensive. You'll need to put paint them black, or put use Panda plastic or something other like that around them to keep the light out of them, so that you don't grow algae in your perlite. So, okay, are you going to do raised beds? I mean, things to consider there. You're going to use grow bags. Are you going to grow totally in soil in your greenhouse? Are you going to grow both? Are you going to do hydroponics and soil? I know there's a couple of guys on here that do both in their greenhouses, and we have some guys that have separate. They have a hydroponic greenhouse and a dirt greenhouse. So there again, you don't have to do hydroponics. You can build you some raised beds inside of there, or you can put grow bags down. I did that the first year I opened this greenhouse up. That was the first thing I started with. If you've ever seen my first video, very first one I ever made was just simply a slideshow of building the greenhouse and growing in it the first time, and everything was done in grow bags and raised beds. And then the very next year I switched it over to hydroponics, because that's just something I wanted to do since I grow outside. Matter of fact, there's raised beds here with the tomatoes. They were in the greenhouse, and I moved them out here when I decided to go with hydroponics, and I put the cracky beds in there in place. So like I said, just things to consider there. Just keep that in mind. Decide what you want to do, or you want to do both. I mean, you can do both, but no problem. So we talked about the nutrients, containers, grow bags, raised beds. You got to have medium for all of that. You got to consider that, like I say, especially the first time around. You're gonna have some things invested here in order to to get everything up and going. So it's going to seem like, man, is this really worth all this? I think it is. Like I said, you're going to spend a little bit up front, but on the back side, you're going to get the benefits of it, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg every year to run it. I mean, I bet I haven't spent any money this year trying to do this stuff. I spent some money on some amendments for my outside soil gardens, raised beds, but as far as the greenhouse, I haven't spent any money on the greenhouse, and I grew hydroponically all winter. So like I say, once you get started, you're good. Keep that in mind. Other materials you'll need: tomato clips, string, net pots, hydroton, perlite, vermiculite. Like I say, if you're going to use soil in there, you'll have to consider where's going to be your source of soil. Are you going to buy all bag soil? Or are you going to make your own compost and topsoil? And there's lots of things to consider there. Whatever you want to do it, however you want to do it, just as long as you have a good quality, nutrient-rich soil to grow inside that greenhouse, then you'll be successful. It's all about the nutrients. So without the soil, the healthy soil, or the good nutrients, and then your plants, of course, are not going to do well, and you're going to fail at what you're trying to do. So you always keep that in mind. That is the number one building block of growing anything, is your soil or your nutrients. Good quality stuff always. If you're going to be growing hydroponically, more things you'll need. You'll need to invest in a ppm meter, which I use a very inexpensive one. Probably cost me $45 maybe, something like that, for the TDS meter, total dissolved solids meter. You can buy them about any range any price range you want, but keep in mind that something like that's very important, because that's how you're keeping track of your total dissolved solids in your nutrient mix. Very important to know your parts per million if you're growing hydroponically. There's some really good ones out there. In fact, I love the one that Brock Hughes has got. I'm sure you guys have seen Brock Hughes' channel. I love that truncheon. He's got one's called a truncheon. It's about yay long, got lights on it that lights up, and got several different scales on it. I love that one. I need to get me one of those one of these days. I guess when mine fizzles out, if it does, then I'll do that. But you'll need a way to check pH. pH monitor is a just about basically just almost an everyday thing, or at least every 3-day thing. What in my case anyway, every 3 days, I take pH readings. You got to make sure, because it can get out of hand real quick if you ain't careful, especially with tomato plants. Tomato plants will drink up water, and they'll leave stuff they'll leave you nutrients in the tank right there, and then you're set up with everything crazy, very low pH, very high parts per million, and total dissolved solids. So you got to, like I say, keep that in mind. You'll need air stones to go in your reservoirs, air pumps. Both of those are very inexpensive items, especially the little air pumps. You can get them at Walmart just for a fish tank, something like that. They got them with multiple outlets. Not real expensive. That's a good idea if you're growing the soil, have a moisture meter. Moisture meter was a lifesaver for me, and because overwatering plants can be just as bad as underwatering them. So keep that in mind. You want to have they cost probably about $10 to $12 or whatever for a little non-power operated moisture meter that you just simply stick in the ground, and it'll tell you if you need water or not. So I say stuff like that, just keep that in mind. Organic pest control. I wouldn't think anybody would consider at all using something that was non-organic in a greenhouse to control pests. That would just be asinine. No liquid 7, no malathion or anything like that. I wouldn't. I would rather use nothing than to use a pesticide like that inside my greenhouse. I don't even use it out here. If y'all watch my pest control video, then you'll see I feel strongly about that. But there's so many organic sprays that you can use that will be as effective as anything else you could use, and it'll be safe for your greenhouse, and safe for you, and safe for your family. Eating the food, because any of that stuff, you can harvest right up to the day you spray. So. And then there's also beneficial insects. Depending on the size of your greenhouse or whatever, beneficial insects are not really costly, especially ladybugs are not very expensive. And believe it or not, you can even order those things from Home Depot, believe it or not. There's plenty of online websites that will ship you beneficial insects. So, that's another consideration right there. Just hire whatever route you want to go, but pest control is going to be obvious. Especially if you decide with your structure, if you want to use roll-up side curtains, you're going to have to consider that there's going to be, the beneficial insects coming in, but the non-beneficial ones are also coming in as well. You got to lessen that problem a little bit if you keep it sealed like I do, but they still get in anyway. So just keep that in mind. Pest control is going to have to be a thing to be considered inside the greenhouse. Plant pruning. Okay, I did a video here a couple weeks ago where I pulled these tomato plants out of this greenhouse from overwinter growing, and they were in there like 8 months, and they were almost 22 feet long. So, got to consider stuff like that. When you're growing in there, and you're like, well, I want to put as many tomato plants in here as I can get in here. Don't do that. Consider things to start with. I'm using about half the length of my greenhouse for my Dutch bucket setup. And then what happens is, when it first starts, you got a tomato plant nice and pretty going straight up. You're growing it single stem. You're keeping the suckers pulled off of it, and everything's looking beautiful. And then it gets up to the ceiling. Then what do? Well, it's got to go somewhere. So, I use the roller hooks and the tomato clips, and I start lowering them down. And usually every time I lower them about a foot every time I lower them. And so that tells you right there that I lowered them tomato plants 22 times during the season. So, And also, when you lower those things, you have to lean them, and you got to decide which direction you're going to go with the lean on those things. You can't just, you know, say, well, I'll lean this one this way and this one that way. You can't do that. Like I say, if y'all seen my other videos right there, you'll see that at the start, the tomatoes were all straight, and then as time went on, they started going further and further to the right, further and further to the right, until they were almost to the other end of the greenhouse. So that's what I'm saying. You got to consider that too. Make room for what you're going to have. And that was only like 5 tomato plants. I actually made it 6 because I had a good healthy sucker come up out of one, and I let it go ahead and live. So I wound up with 6. But anyway, technically 5 buckets. I had 5 buckets going down through there, but they got to be lowered and got to be leaned as they're lowered. You can't just drop them because that stem's got to go somewhere. And in fact, mine, by the time the season was up, I had to start coming back the other direction. I done looped them around the reservoir and then started back going the other direction with them. So like I said, keep that in mind. You know, it's don't put too many in there that you can't keep them under control, because they're going to get out of control, because they're going to grow, believe you me. And that's the same whether you're using Dutch buckets or you using grow bags. They're still going to have to be lowered and leaned. You'll have to set up something for that. You'll have to have a purlin or a cable, which I have a cable attached to a purlin that I have my roller hooks on, where you can slide them things down when you're leaning them. You can just pick the roller hook up and slide it over, and that moves the whole plant to the right. So keep that in mind. Don't try to put too many in there where you don't have room for them, and then you find yourself crowded and you don't like, well, what am I going to do? I ain't got nowhere to put these things. So I'm not going to keep rattling on about that, but reservoir size, okay, that's going to depend on how many plants you have. Both of my runs on Dutch buckets are I'm using 27-gallon reservoirs. Every 3 days, when the tomatoes are when they start growing, really growing, and they start fruiting heavily, every 3 days it's nothing but drink that nutrient mix up. I'm having to add about usually 10 to 12 gallons every 2 to 3 days, something like that, in order to keep it above the pump. You know, because you got to keep eye on that. You don't want to burn your pump up. If you let it run dry, you will burn it up. But if you're gonna have 3 or 4 tomato plants, you can get away with a smaller reservoir. You know, that way you lessen your frequency of changing out your nutrients. So keep that in mind. Ventilation. Oh boy, here we go. Once again, roll up side curtains, fans and shutters, circulation fans inside the greenhouse. You got to keep that air moving all the time. Never let that air be still, unless you want leaf mold set in. Those plants are putting off moisture, and those leaves get wet, especially overnight. Those leaves will get soaking wet. And if you don't have a way to ventilate that greenhouse and keep the air moving at the same time, I mean, of course, at night your cooling fans shouldn't be running. It's just not needed at night because it's not hot enough in there. So there you go. If you're not pulling air through that greenhouse, then you got to have something circulating that air. And the ideal thing is to create a vortex effect. The way mine's set up, I'm only using one circulation fan, but it's like a 22-inch fan hanging from the ceiling, and it's angled in such a way that it's creating a vortex by bouncing off the walls. So I don't have a return because my greenhouse is not that large. So the one fan has been doing the job pretty good, and I have it on the actual tomato plant side of the greenhouse. So it does a good job of heading back around, creating a circulation in there. And then of course when the cooling fan's on during the day, you're pulling air through the greenhouse, exchanging it anyway. And exchangement of air is very important because as those plants are growing, they are eating up all the CO2. So even on a cloudy day, cloudy cool day, you need to, even if your fans don't want to come on, you need to make them come on and exchange the air in that greenhouse, a few times a day, because you got to get that fresh CO2 in there from the outside. Because once that CO2 is used up, then the plant doesn't have any more. So the plants are giving off oxygen. So you just got a room full of oxygen and no CO2 for the plants to have. So keep that in mind. Ventilation. And we talked about the heating and the cooling, so we got that covered. And you got to make sure that you get a fan big enough, a fan and a shutter big enough for your size greenhouse. You know, if you're gonna build a gigantic one, I think that's one of the biggest ones I can think of on a personal level here, as far as home greenhouses, is probably Chuck Fenster's probably got the biggest greenhouse that I've seen, other than Bobby MHP Gardner. In a case like that, you need some big fans. I mean, it's, you know, I'm using a 30-inch shutter on the one end, and a 24-inch fan that pulls, I think it's 4,400 CFM through that greenhouse. So, and it just barely does get the job done. So I'm here to tell you. So keep that in mind. And I don't know, guys. Like I said, this is just some things to consider. You know, you just got to consider what you want to do. I mean, and I've just tried to give you guys some ideas. I hope I didn't rattle on too much. Try to give you some ideas about if you're trying to get started, questions that you may have wanted to ask and have not asked, or you know, such as that. You know, and I'm sure I didn't cover everything, but I think I covered the basics as to, you know, to what I think you should do, and how you should go about it in order to get started growing a greenhouse. I mean, you know, and I wish you all very much success. I mean, I know, you know, as YouTubers, you know, a lot of us, I mean, I know I love to, you know, to feel like I'm helping somebody, and that's the whole purpose. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't be doing videos. I mean, if I didn't feel like it was benefiting somebody, I mean, what would be the point, other than, you know, just, you know, if you're just saying you're just doing it just to have fun. Well, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I mean, you know, I don't have a big channel like a lot of guys out there do, but you know, I feel like that, you know, things are growing every day, and you know, and as long as people are enjoying my videos, you know, then I'm gonna keep right on making them. You know, you're always gonna get people that's not gonna like your stuff or whatever, or people that's gonna love your stuff. So, you know, those of y'all are just getting started and everything, just keep on plugging away at it and do the best you can, because like I said, the bottom line is, you know, we want to help people grow, and we, you know, if for nothing else, like I say, self-sustainability, you know, growing healthy food that you know where it came from. Just like I've heard the saying many times, if you don't know it, you don't grow it, and that is absolutely true. You go in this grocery store and stuff, you don't know where none of that stuff came from. But if you grow it yourself, you know where it came from and what it took to grow it, and you know it's going to be healthy, and you know it ain't is no GMO involved or anything like that, and you know, and the government's not controlling it. So, you know, I mean, guys, we need to do something here. We need to teach our children. I've been working with my neighbor's kids over here next door. They were kind of house couch potatoes. They're in their early teen years and stuff like that, and they took an interest in growing a garden. So what did I do? I jumped in there with all fours and I helped them out. And it's just been different as night and day. They come outside, they're picking vegetables out of their very own garden, and they're just tickled to death. And then, you know, and I think that's the greatest thing in the world right there, is to see, especially seeing young people get involved and growing. Because, I mean, guys, we got to do something. I mean, you know, we could be running out of time here. We just don't never know when something's going to happen, you know, and people are going to be like, you know, what am I going to do now? So, anyway, I'm going to stop rattling on. But anyway, guys, I hope y'all enjoyed this, and I hope it was helpful to you. And may God bless you all, and happy growing, and we'll see you next time.